Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Musey's Modern Dreadfuls. Yippee-Ki-Ya Musey lovers. I am sorry if I sound very rushed. My state is on fire again. So, without any delay at all, hopefully, I am going to hop right back into section 12 of this miniseries. Ready? All right. Hang on, and here we go. In 5, 4, 3. Dolores looked back at her husband's picture. Her facial expression turned to one of painful reminiscence. You've seen something there, haven't you? Wait a minute. No, you've seen something there, haven't you? I asked. She continued staring at the picture of her husband for a long moment. Voices often come from your apartment, she said, but not moving her gaze from her husband's smiling face. At first, I thought there were more people in there, but then someone told me the apartment wasn't even occupied by a new tenant yet. Then one night, I heard my husband calling me from that apartment. I thought I was dreaming, so I stayed in bed, awake, listening. At first, there was only silence, but then I heard his voice again. Dolly, he called out to me. But he was the only one who ever called me that. You gotta understand that the walls are thin here, and you can hear your neighbors clearly. So when I heard Harold's voice, I got up and followed it. It became more and more apparent that it was coming from room 304. I'm in here. Dolly, he kept saying. I turned the knob and the apartment was unlocked for some reason. I went in, even though my body was screaming at me to run away. I came to this one door inside the apartment, which was closed, and it was clear to me that my Harold was in there, right on the other side of the door. I asked if it was really him, shaking all over. It's been so long since I've seen him, and my still sleepy mind couldn't comprehend what I was hearing or feeling. What really worried me, though, was the fact that I wasn't glad to hear from him. I was dreading it. I had seen him die already, came to terms with his death, and then to hear him here in this foul place, it just didn't feel right. He told me to open the door, and I grabbed the knob, almost fully ready to do it. But I couldn't. Something was telling me not to open that door. Harold, or whatever the hell that thing on the other side was, sensed my hesitation, so he asked me again to open the door, telling me we could finally be together again. When I willed myself back away, he became violent, calling me names and telling me the most horrible things. See, that's what got me going. He said that he never loved me and that he couldn't wait to die to get away from me. She paused and sniffled, wiping away silent tears aside from this brief and painful to hear sniffles. So, I ran away from there as fast as I could, not looking back and ignoring his taunts. I locked my apartment and went inside my bedroom, hearing the muffled voice of my dead husband. Eventually, it stopped. She looked at me with red eyes after taking a big swallow and said, I never made a step closer to that apartment again, even though I was friendly with the tenant who lived here right before you came along. I never dared enter 304 again. And then, soon after, she disappeared as well. We stared at each other in complete silence. I broke the silence after a while, and I finally asked, "Who was that tenant? Do you know her name?" Dolores nodded. "Of course," she smiled. "Her name was Michelle." Dolores told me everything she knew. She knew the tenant's name was Michelle, and that she suddenly became more and more reclusive before she disappeared altogether. But that was it. She was certain the apartment was directly involved with her disappearance. I asked her if she knew who the landlord was, but of course she didn't. Seems that no one did, and by this point, I started to firmly believe that he was somehow directly involved with all of this. I finished my coffee and thanked Dolores, telling her I should probably get going. "Wait," she said as I got up. She approached the shelf which her husband's photo had been on and took the tiny cross. She took my hand and forcefully put the cross in, saying, "The Lord keeps me safe in my own place, but you need much stronger protection in there." I wasn't an atheist, but I wasn't a strong believer either. I didn't believe that the wooden cross would somehow protect me from whatever those evil forces in the apartment were, but I wanted to assure Dolores since she was very worried, and I could tell. "I'll put it in my living room. Thank you, Dolores," I said, putting the cross in my pocket. "Listen," she said, when I reached the door threshold. "If you hear something coming from that storage room, any voices of anyone who you think is a person you may know, ignore it. I can assure you, whoever is on the other side is not interested in your well-being." I nodded, and she closed the door. I exhaled and took a step towards my room before stopping. Just then, there was the sound of doors opening and closing loudly on the ground floor. A male voice echoed all the way to the third floor, clear enough for me to hear. "The keys are on you, Marjorie?" It was Vincent. My neighbor was finally back, but I decided to wait a couple more hours so that it doesn't seem like I'm assaulting him as soon as he came back from fishing. I knew I had every right to do so, but it was in my interest to be on his good side if I wanted to get any information about Susan, Michelle, and the landlord. I returned to my room and ordered some food. After eating and cleaning up, I couldn't wait anymore. So I decided to go downstairs, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I got at Vincent. I needed to cool down before I saw him. He knew something was wrong with the apartment, and even his own daughter went missing while living there, and he hid it all from me. I knocked on his door, trying to stay as calm as possible. A moment later, the door swung open, and it was an elderly lady. Despite her advanced age, the The woman had a warm and gentle face. Hi, she said with a big warm smile. You're Nathan, right? Come on in. Before I could even say anything, she ushered me inside, so I gave her a meager "thank you" under my breath. Vince, our neighbor Nate is here, Marjorie shouted. Nathan? Well, bring him on inside, Vincent shouted back from the living room. You go on ahead in the living room. He's in there, Marjorie said and went in the kitchen. I went into the living room. The apartment looked exactly like the vision I had in room 204. Nathan, good to see you, son. Vincent shook hands with me and gestured for me to sit down. We just came back home recently. Yeah, I saw your note. How was the fishing? Catch anything big? I asked. He sat down across from me, then leaned in and whispered, My biggest catch, till this day, is still my wife. He smiled and winked at me. I heard that, you old bastard. Marjorie's voice came from the kitchen. I meant it in a good way, Vincent rebutted, but kept smiling. It was clear the couple was used to that sort of joking around amongst themselves and were probably comfortable with it. I sometimes forget how you can hear everything in this building. Marjorie's gonna start cooking soon. You should stay, Vincent said. Sure thing, thanks, I said. I really didn't want to stay, especially since I'd eaten prior to that, but wanted to stay on Vincent's good side. We made small talk for a while, him talking about his trip and me about my work, leaving out the parts about the door and everything that happened related to it. 10 minutes later, Marjorie shouted from the foyer, Vincent, I'm sorry, I need to pick up some things from the store around the corner. If you hear any sizzling noise, ignore it, Marjorie said. Sure, Marge, he said. A moment later, Marjorie left the apartment, leaving me alone with Vincent. Everything okay in your apartment, by the way? He asked casually. This worked out perfectly for me to initiate the topic. Yeah, everything was fine. I was just wondering about a couple of things. Yeah, like what? Vincent leaned back. Do you know anyone who lived in this building by the name of Michelle? I asked hesitantly and locked my eyes with his. He stared at me for a moment before shaking his head with a confused look on his face. Can't say I do. Like I said, don't talk much to the other tenants. You absolutely sure? The lady on my floor, Dolores, said she saw you talking to the previous tenants. I bluffed, hoping it would work. Vincent looked uncomfortable for the first time, but tried hiding it. He thought for a moment and then snapped his fingers. You know what? He said. You're right. I did talk to one tenant, but I didn't know she lived in your room. Dolores said you guys got to know each other well, like exchanged names and everything like that. I refused to back down. Well, I don't remember, he said, but he was beginning to get angry. Anyway, what's it to you, Nathan? I know you lied to me, Vincent, about knowing the other tenants, about Susan. What are you talking about? You told me Susan moved out. Dolores told me she lived in room 304 and disappeared shortly after. What's going on, Vincent? He shrugged and said, Look, Dolores is an old woman. A little delusional, too. Susan simply moved out and is currently in university. I nodded, staring at the coffee table. A moment later, I said, The other tenants could get suspicious. Vincent's eyes widened. What did you just say? That's what you told Marjorie. I looked at him. You were sitting at the kitchen table. You were both pale and tired. You assured her you'd have everyone keep the secret. What secret, Vincent? Vincent stared at me a long moment and then leaned back on his knees, shifting his gaze to the coffee table again. He exhaled deeply and nodded. All right. We moved here right after the place was built. We bought this apartment and wanted to leave it for Susan. After we were gone, you know what I mean, gone. But she insisted that she had her own place for renting in the meantime, until she left for college. So we indulged her and rented 304 for her. We never met the landlord, but the real estate agency handled everything, and we never asked any questions. Everything seemed fine at first, but not long after that, Susan simply disappeared. Her apartment was left unlocked and she was gone. No signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle, just gone. By this point, tears were beginning to well up in Vincent's eyes. He continued, The apartment was closed down for a short time while the investigation lasted. Pardon me. I'm sorry, Nathan. Give me a second. Anyway, they investigated, but after they found no evidence inside, the landlord started renting the place again. I still hope and pray that she will one day come home to us unharmed. Having no conclusion like this is far worse than knowing you have to bury your own child. He looked at me with red, swollen eyes. So yeah, that was the secret I didn't want people to talk about and to ask me and Marjorie about. Constantly reminding of us both of our loss, all right? We can't leave this place, but we want to forget. Vincent, I'm so sorry. I suddenly felt stupid and like a horrible person. It's all right. You didn't know. And it is a mysterious situation. Being in an apartment with a locked storage door and a landlord who you never met. I get it. About that door, Vincent, has it always been locked? Always. Gather his composure again. Never opened since we arrived. Are you absolutely sure? I know what you're implying, Nathan, but a door is just that, a door. Susan complained about sounds coming from the storage, so I had it checked out by professionals. Mice, right? I sarcastically asked. Yeah, mice, nothing else. Susan was kidnapped by someone, and that's a fact. She didn't disappear because of something locked behind a door. The front door opened, and Marjorie stumbled inside with a grocery bag. "Nathan, I think you'll love what I'm making," she said enthusiastically. Vincent stood up and said, "I'm afraid Nate can't stay, Marge. He has some very important work to do, coding or something. Right, Nate?" He looked at me, and I knew what that look was saying. "Yeah, maybe next time, Marjorie," I said hesitantly. "Oh, that's too bad. I'm making my famous stew. Can't you stay just a little longer?" Marjorie said. "I'll be sure to try some next time, ma'am," I smiled. "Thank you for having me, though." "You stop by again soon, son," Vincent smiled, and I could tell he meant what he said. I returned to my apartment, replaying the entire conversation in my mind for a while. I couldn't imagine what Vincent was going through. I pushed the thoughts out of my head and decided I had to mentally prepare for my journey in the storage room tonight. 3:19 a.m. came faster than it usually does, and as always, the door opened. I lazily got up from my chair and ventured inside, through the corridor and into the dilapidated apartment room. Martin was there, as always. He bowed, his head down, but I simply ran past him. I couldn't afford to waste my time. I was ready to rush through the first floor towards the stairs when I heard a loud ding to my right. And with that, I am happy I was able to get you anything, because California being on fire and all. But it is the finale for this episode. But a lot more exciting things will be coming, and I'll get you Spooktober by Halloween. Maybe me, maybe another channel. But the finale, I might even just read the whole thing beginning to end. And I thank Madam Raven. Give her a like and a follow. She's in 2 videos back. I'll probably add her as soon as her URL again, as soon as things are less psychotic here. Please forgive any background noises, sirens, whatever. I gave you an extra long episode to hopefully make up for it. And there you go. I will see you soon. And I'm safe, and so are all the muses in the world, hopefully. And I hope you are too. All right. Bye now.